Hey guys, welcome back to the Focused on Fins 2026 Miami Dolphins NFL Draft Film Review Series. This is the 10th video, which means we're going to have at least three more to come for the draft picks and then possibly one or two more for the undrafted guys. But today, we're going to take a look at fifth round pick, number 180 overall, tight end Seydou Traoré from Mississippi State. And I started out thinking this would be a quick and straightforward review, but this ended up being a much more nuanced review than I anticipated, and hopefully you enjoy it. Traore was part of the NFL's International Pathway Program, and he was actually the third player to be drafted behind Jordan Mailata in 2018 and Travis Clayton in 2024. I previously misspoke on that, thinking that Traore was the first International Pathway player to be drafted, but he is the highest as a fifth round pick. The other two were seventh round picks. Had this quote from Dolphins general manager John-Eric Sullivan: "He's kind of a raw, athletic ball of clay, if you will. He should only get better. He hasn't been playing football real long, so that was what was intriguing to us, especially at that value. We felt he's a player who's ascending, whose best ball is in front of him, and who can be a problem for defenses in time. We had our eyes on him for a while, and he fell to us at the right value, so we took a shot." And that kind of follows a theme that John-Eric Sullivan has talked about multiple times of wanting to find guys whose best football is in front of them. Now, Traore was born in London. He attended a UK-based NFL academy, and then he moved to the US to pursue football at a higher level. Began his college career at Arkansas State, was definitely used as more of a flex and move tight end there. Had a breakout season in 2022 with 50 catches for 655 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then he transferred to Mississippi State, but had to sit out 2023, as a transition period with NCAA transfer rules. So 2024 really started his competition in the SEC. And at Mississippi State, especially in 2025, he was used in a lot of different ways from game to game. Like, it really never felt like Mississippi State was committed to a defined role for him. He played in an offense there that rarely used a true hand in the dirt inline tight end, and also rarely ever used two tight ends. So he was, again, at Mississippi State, more of that flex move piece lined up somewhere in the backfield, right, as more of a move player than a inline player. Still very productive career with 131 receptions for 1,482 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he does have that alignment versatility, right? He was used as a slot, as a perimeter receiver, as a wing, an H-back, and a little bit inline as well. When you see him on tape, it's pretty easy to see that, he's a smooth mover. He's got reliable hands. One of the things that I was a little surprised by was the lack of jump ball opportunities that were provided for him. And I don't know whether that was a Traore thing, whether it's a scheme thing, or whether it's a quarterback thing, because Mississippi State had some erratic quarterback play throughout the season. As an inline blocker, you know, still developing very much. And anybody that tells you anything different, or if they tell you he's got high potential as an inline run blocker, they're making more of a guess than our projection, because the reps just are not there. And we're going to take a look at the ones that we have, but you could probably count on your two hands without taking your socks off how many times he lined up as an inline tight end throughout the entire season. The games that I watched for his receiving productivity were Tennessee, Texas, and Ole Miss. And then I also put Georgia and Missouri in there because those were very high run game output for the entire team. And I wanted to see whether Traore was a big reason behind that, or whether he was just kind of along along for the ride there. All right. So in today's review, we are going to look at, those reps that he lined up in line. We're going to look at some plays where he showed some really good effort, which has been another theme from both John-Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley through the offseason. We're going to look at a lot of the different ways that he was used in 2025. We're going to look at the different types of runs that he had, or different types of routes that he ran. And then, of course, we're also going to look at his targets and catches and see what he looked like with the ball in his hands. And then, of course, because I'm doing this review and I dive way further into blocking than anybody probably should, we're going to go through all of the different types of blocks they asked him to do and kind of talk about how that may project to the NFL. So we're going to look at crack seals, we're going to look at inserts, we're going to look at escorts, we're going to look at perimeter leads, all of that stuff. And then we'll come back at the end. We'll talk about overall opinions on him and where we think he fits in the roster. But that's enough for the intro and preview. Let's get into the film review. All right, film review. This first segment of film review is going to be the handful of snaps, only 4 of them over 5 games, that Traore was lined up with his hand in the dirt as a traditional tight end. First one here, we're going to see him coming in motion, and then this is going to be a play action pass where he blocks down and then leaks out. Nice effort at the end here trying to help out on the block, but that's the first of the inline reps that he had throughout all the film that I had watched for Seydou Traoré. And you can see nothing too special here. Next one, top of your screen again against Georgia. And you can see that this is a pin and pull with some backside action here. And Traore is just essentially climbing to that second level. The quarterback is reading this defensive end here. If the defensive end crashes inside, then he's going to give it to the running back going outside. They're not even going to block that defensive end. But because that defensive end kind of mirrors Traore going to the outside, that's why he keeps the ball and goes around to the right side. Again, top of your screen, this one's going to be a long trap quarterback lead. And again, you can see Traore is not blocking the defensive end. He's climbing to the next level, and they're going to bring the right guard over to kick out that defensive end. And they actually have the running back climbing to the linebacker, and Traore is just climbing up to the corner in this situation. And then last one here. This is going to be similar to the first one, but there is no leak out. This is just a play action rollout. Traore is blocking that defensive end and blocking him down. And you can see he does a okay job with that. But overall, these are the 4 snaps through 5 entire games that Traore lined up as an inline tight end. And you can see that he's not doing true inline tight end stuff. He's not taking on a defensive end. He's not comboing up to the second level, that kind of stuff. So that's, if somebody is telling you that he has the potential to be an inline tight end, that's very much a projection or a guess as to what he can do, because the film just isn't there. And what is there, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's also not a true reflection of what he would look like if you were to ask him to be on the front side of outside zone, for example, or stuff like that. So again, just wanted to make sure that we did cover the inline stuff as part of this film review. And then our next set of clips here are just going to be looking at the different types of routes that Seydou Traoré was asked to run throughout the season. And these are going to be the ones where he does not get the ball, but it gives you a good alignment or a good understanding of the types of alignments they used and the routes that he was asked to run. So first play here, we're going to see him up here in the slot and just see him running a bit of a skinny post here, right? So more of a wide receiver type route here. Now we're going to get him on the wing. He's going to chip and help out and then leak out into the flat. I think this is something that really translates well for him in the NFL. We'll see with the run after catch stuff in the reception section. But I think that if you can have him help out a tackle on the edge and then leak out, I think he's got some potential there. Now we're going to get him stacked out here as a perimeter receiver going to motion and then dragging over the middle. Another thing that I think that he could do pretty well in the NFL. Again, just dragging over the middle there, finding some open space. Ball's not going to him. Now we're getting him lined up as the wing, right? He's out the slot, motions into the wing. And when we see how often they used him as an insert lead blocker, you can see why they would ask him to do this. But this is just, motioning to the middle, checking to make sure there's nothing that needs help, and then leaking out there to the flat from the middle. Top of the screen is a slot here, getting a dig route here. And this is, right, basically clearing stuff up, right? Helping the quarterback to read the defense, or the defense reads that safety being in man coverage on Traore and decides to take the deep shot with it. But you can see that they're using him on a, what is it, a 10-yard dig route. Bottom of the screen here. Now we're getting him on a slot comeback, right? So again, we're looking in the 10-yard range is where they're asking him to make his cuts. Then lined up out here in the slot again, we're going to see him running a slot fade, right? And maybe part of this comes down to the way the quarterback was manipulating the safety a bit here, but would have liked to see an easy pitch and catch here to the slot fade as Traore came wide open. And then we're going to see another comeback up here. Line up as the outside receiver, right? And he does a good job there. I like the way that he gears down at the end of that route. Now, it's not going to be all that effective against a cornerback, but if we can get him against a linebacker or a big nickel type player, then I think that is something that you could see him do effectively. And then last one here, we're going to see again, right? As the wing sets into pass protection, gives a little bit of help to that tackle, and then leaks out to the flat. So as you can see through those reps, they used him in a lot of different alignments. They asked him to do a lot of different things. Didn't see a ton of stuff over the middle. Really felt like the routes that he was running were closer to wide receiver routes than what you would consider, your typical tight end routes. So I don't necessarily think that the way that Mississippi State used Traore as a route runner is going to translate to what he does in the NFL, but you can still see the flashes that will translate to stuff that he could do even early in his career and help out in the NFL. And next, we're going to take a look at where he was targeted on those different pass routes. So on this one, lined up as a wing here, just leaking out, quick catch, get a few extra yards, right? Catch the ball, get upfield, get what you can. Nothing too spectacular here. Now we're getting him from the slot in the top there, right? Running a fade, stopping, right? Catch the ball, get upfield. So again, nothing special. Catch in the open field. Nice, smooth hands, but does a good job of when he catches the ball, turns immediately and gets upfield and gets what's there. Next one over here on the right side, going to see him get that chip, release, and now we're seeing a little bit of the run after catch, right? Beating that linebacker to the sideline. And that's a, long distance yardage there. You can see he's just getting to the beginning of the first down markers there, but making it more manageable. Now we're going to get him in split flow action here, passing up that edge defender. So he's over here as your wing coming across the formation. That's a fairly tough catch, right? Looking over your back, or looking over your right shoulder, looking back at the quarterback. So tough catch. And I like the way that he, again, gets his head around, gets upfield. And he doesn't score on this one, I don't think. Or I guess he does, right? But that's a really athletic play to be able to catch that, get your eyes around, and then be able to, essentially stop your momentum to the sideline to allow you to dive forward. So really nice body control there from Traore. Now we're going to get kind of a similar play. Motion over to the wing, getting out to the flat, and now we see him drop that, right? And maybe that's just a directional thing, that he's better doing that from the right to the left. Maybe it's a concentration thing, trying to get his eyes upfield, knowing that, it's a good defense. We're looking at Texas here, right? So you've got Anthony Hill in coverage there, maybe just trying to do a little too much. Whatever it is, it's a drop, but it is a very tough play, even though it might not look that way. And then next one out here at the wing, a little bit of an escort screen there. Wide receiver is going to get out. And we're going to see him doing a solid job of run after catch again there. Very tight quarters, right? In a perfect world, maybe you'd want to see him get inside that cornerback's block, but you're asking him to turn around, catch that ball, and then get around to see how Malik Muhammad is getting blocked there. So decent job of 1st and 10 play, and we're getting out near the sticks on a ball that's caught near the line of scrimmage. Coming into motion here onto your screen, a little bit of a chip, and then nice job here just to the concentration, right? That it looks easy, but when you're expecting a ball to be, basically bulleted at you from 7 yards away, and then it gets tipped up in the air, it's nice concentration there. See him make it look relatively easy. Now we're going to get him up here, or down here on the bottom, a little bit of a delayed slant there. And again, nice run after catch. So he's down here on the bottom in the slot, going to fake the fade, get back to the inside. And he is carrying a defender for over 5 yards. So good power with the run after catch on this one. And now we're going to get another delay here. So it's going to be a bit of an escort screen again. And you can see, right, showing a little bit of athleticism there, getting up in the air. Another 1st and 10 play where he's catching at the line of scrimmage, and now he's making it 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2. So good run after catch skills by Traore in a lot of this film. Now he's down here as a wing. Going to get a bit of a choice route here, it looks like, and he chooses the out. Good job catching that ball, going to the sideline, catching it away from his body. Like to see that, like to see the soft hands. Looking to chip, and now he's just kind of finding the open space. That defender goes to the inside, that defensive end, so there is no chip. So once he sees that, he finds the open space, catches it, does a good job. I don't know the down distance for this one, but he knows that linebacker's coming over from the far side, and he knows the safety is over top of him. So unless this was a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 situation, then I have no problem with him protecting himself in a sense on that one. Next one, we're getting a bit of a China route here, right? Turns to the inside, gets to the outside. Again, you can see the natural hands catching the ball away from the frame of his body and then turning, getting upfield. Would maybe like to see this route be, snap it a little quicker to the outside, but for a big guy, right, you got to temper your expectations a little bit there, but like the way that he is, plucking that ball out of the air, hands away from his body and getting upfield. Now we're going to get him from the wing, running a post, and now we see him catching through contact a little bit. Little different catch here, not catching it away from his body. This ball is low, hitting him in the waistline, and he's doing a good job of, pinkies in and letting that ball get into his body and letting his body shield the defender from making that play. And another one where he looks like he's fallen in for a touchdown. Good run after catch on this one, right? Another situation where he's checking for that chip. That defender's running all the way to the outside, which may be why he, didn't do anything with that. Or maybe it's just that he knows that he's not chipping in that situation. And I don't know whether the running back and Traore, whether this was the way it was intended or whether one of them ran the wrong route. You typically don't see these guys running into the same space like this, but Traore does a good job of reading those blocks and getting upfield. Out here in the slot, just almost a now pass, right? It's only a stick route basically, right? You see the first down marker at the top there, so he is just getting to the first down marker, making himself available, and you can see again, this is another one where he's using his body to try to shield that defender and then getting upfield. So nice first down conversion on this one. Now we get him down here on the slot on the bottom, running a fade route. And this was one of the only, jump ball opportunities they gave Traore. And I'm not going to knock him too much for this because this ball was severely underthrown. Traore does a good job of helping to break that play up. But this kind of goes back to the topic of, I don't know whether this was a scheme thing that they just didn't throw many jump balls in general in this offense, or whether it was a quarterback thing, as you can see the underthrown ball there, or whether it was a Traore thing, because I would like to see him adjust to that ball a little better. He gets his eyes on it fairly early. Would like to see him slow down and compete for it a little more. But, we're talking a sample size of one. You see him getting a little bit off balance there with the contact. There's a million things that can go into this. It's just one of those things that I would have liked to see more from him to say that, yes, he can be that red zone jump ball target guy. Now we're getting him down in the slot again, and we're just seeing, a little sit route there. Again, just finding the open space, getting to the inside of that linebacker, making himself available. Another good job with the run after catch. You see him break that tackle, and then as soon as he breaks that tackle, you see the acceleration. You see him getting, another 10, 15 yards of run after catch on that one. Another one where he's in the, a wing alignment. Another good run after catch, and another one where you can see that he's got a defender on him. The ball is thrown low, a little behind him even, and Traore does a good job of adjusting to that throw, making the catch while still on the run, right? He's not stopping to make that catch. He's making it on the run, which is why that defender is not able to bring him down, and then getting vertical and getting plenty of run after catch. And then last one here, we're seeing him motion into the wing on the top of your screen. Very similar to that earlier one where the running back ran to the same location. This is a 2nd and 10 play, and you can see he's catching this ball 3-4 yards, getting upfield quickly, breaking one tackle, and then continuing to fall forward. So as you can see, through all of those targets, through those 5 games, there was only one drop, right? And that was one that I would consider, I don't want to say like spectacular level, but it is a higher degree of difficulty than I think that many realize. There was also only one example of the jump ball stuff, but there were plenty of examples of natural hands, right? Very, very dependable. Shows that he can catch the ball in different ways, whether it's, away from his body, plucking it out of the air, or using his body to shield the defender from being able to make a play on the ball. And then the run after catch stuff. That I think that's going to be one of the more exciting parts of his game if he can develop into an every down player. When he catches the ball, he does a good job of getting upfield, shows the ability to break some of those tackles. Would maybe like to see a little more wiggle from him, but I think that's something that could come with time, right? That's one of those things that, if you're only catching 3-4 balls a game, you want to make sure that you're maximizing it. But if you turn into a player that's getting 5-10 targets a game, then you have a little more leeway with what you can do with the ball in your hands. I think that would, be an interesting role to see Traore in. Obviously has to develop in some other areas in addition to his route running in some sense. We saw some of these routes where would like to see him be a little more crisp, a little more sharp out of the cut, stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for him as a receiver in the NFL. And then just a quick section here. So Traore, one of the things that has been emphasized throughout the draft picks, throughout the offseason workouts, has been effort, right? In finishing plays, chasing the ball. And Traore does a good job of that. And I thought there was a few clips that really demonstrated that. So on this one, he's down here in the slot, and you can see that as the running back breaks past him, that Traore is still in a full sprint, right? He is passing both defenders and offensive guys to be the first guy down there to congratulate his teammate. Right at this point, you know that you're not getting any kind of block that's going to help that, but just the excitement to get down there. And this is going to be the end zone angle of that same block. He's going to come down here, block number 7. And as you can see, he is down here, and you can just see the effort, full sprint all the way. And as he gets in the end zone, you can see Traore, windmill celebrating. So just like to see that out of, especially a role player, right? Just excited for somebody else to do something huge. Next one here, he's going to be down here, standing up on the outside. And now this one, the quarterback breaks the pocket, and you can see that Traore does a good job of turning around and getting lashed onto his defender. Now the quarterback decides to run this out of bounds on 3rd down and, very long. But I like the fact that Traore, when he realizes that he's not going to be an option, is doing a good job here of turning around, trying to be involved as a blocker, trying to do what he can to make the best of a really tough situation. And then last one's going to be somewhat similar here. We're going to get him on the top, chip, release, and then you can see him sitting down. But look at how far, right? He's the top of the screen here. And they're going from 2 yards on the hash, and he is running that linebacker. I believe that's a linebacker. Yeah, it's a linebacker. And he's doing a good job of turning and just cutting off the angle here, right? Not blocking him in the back, not holding him. Just turn and run and get in the way and then run him the whole way out of the end zone. So, gotta love that effort type stuff from Traore when you see it on the film. And now we're going to get into the blocking side of things. So, first thing we're going to look at, these are more almost traditional tight end type reps, but he's not going to be in a traditional tight end alignment. These are going to be some backside cutoffs, stuff like that. And we're going to see him, trying to take on more of a defensive end than we, versus linebacker, safeties, things like that. So lined up on the bottom of your screen, trying to step inside here. Looks like inside zone. And you can see that Traore is not doing a good job of being able to prevent that defensive end from getting to the inside. That defensive end is part of the reason the running back has to bounce it outside. And it ends well, but if we are evaluating Traore on what he is doing specifically on this play, you can see that he's not doing a very good job as almost an inline blocker. Same idea here. So this is going to be, power coming around the edge here. And I don't think that Traore was supposed to block number 14. I think that he was trying to get to the inside of him and get to 26. But whether he was trying to get to the inside of 26 or whether he was supposed to seal number 14, can't say they did a great job on either of those. If he was supposed to block number 14, then he is, getting knocked inside to the B gap where the ball's supposed to go there, and you can see the guard ends up having to knock Traore out of the way. If he's supposed to get down to number 26, then he's really got to commit and rip there and get out of the way so the guard can kick out number 14. So either way, not good enough on that one. Similar idea here. So this is, duo to the right, and Traore wants to cut off there. And he, this one, he doesn't do a bad job. I mean, number one kind of makes it easy for him, but would like to see Traore be able to not lose ground at all there, and also to not let that defender spin back into the play. And this one's going to be a very similar block, right? So we're getting duo again, and you can see this time that Traore is just getting, beat to the inside. He starts with inside leverage on number one, and when number one slants to the inside like that, you got to be able to just kind of wash him down and let the running back get one-on-one with number 4 on the edge there. Not a great situation for the offense, but Traore is not doing a good job of making the best of the situation. Got to be better against an edge player here if you want to play in the box as a tight end in the NFL. And then last one here, again, this is going to be, long trap to the left. Or no, it's, I guess, more of a dart play, right? We're getting doubles from the right guard center, left guard, left tackle, and then the right tackle is pulling across to kick out, and he doesn't do a good job. The tackle misses that completely. But we're talking about Traore, and you can see, I mean, it could be worse, right? He doesn't have a critical block on this play, but at the same time, you don't want to see an edge just be able to walk him back, get to the inside, and be able to get in on making the play from the opposite side. So if he's going to be used in these type of roles, this is one of those things that definitely needs to improve at the NFL level. Next that we're going to look at here is going to be Traore lined up, mostly as a slot, coming down, crack blocks, seal blocks, and there's, I don't know, this one requires probably a way deeper conversation than what we can have here, because there are times I think that he's doing an okay job, but maybe is not understanding the leverage or understanding the assignment as well. This one, I think he does a good job, right? As he climbs to that inside linebacker, you can see the inside linebacker is shooting a gap, and that Traore does a good job of not chasing him, but just kind of creating a wall there and picking up the next defender, which is that backside linebacker. And no, he doesn't get a big block there, but he forces him to run upfield, and that's what you want all day. And then Traore does a good job of following him and making him take a poor angle. On this one, we see Traore coming down to the middle. And on one hand, I would like to see Traore take a better angle to try to seal him to the inside, but I also don't know where this play was intended to run, right? The offensive line is not really sprinting to the edge as if this is an outside zone and they're trying to crack down from the outside here. So I don't know whether they wanted Traore to get to the inside like he does, or whether they wanted him to seal that defender from getting to the outside. You know, in the end, Traore gets in the way enough that his defender does not make the play on this, but questionable as to, how well he did. Now we're going to get him motioning to the inside. And I this is one that I feel like he passed up the defender that was his accountability. Maybe, right? Because I guess if we're running outside zone here, you can see that the center is getting to the 2-eye and the guard tackle are getting to this end. And maybe the guard tackle have this outside linebacker, and it is Traore's job to get to the inside. Even if it is, right, he gets down there and doesn't really do a good job of taking on that block. Just kind of puts his shoulder out there, allows that inside linebacker to bounce off of him underneath. And, he's not going to get over there and make the play. But, still just a situation that, there's something lacking there for me, whether the physicality, the technique, that kind of stuff. And then here lined up in the slot on the bottom again. And this is, again, similar to that first, or maybe it was the second play, where I'm not sure what they wanted Traore to do here. Was he being asked to get inside this defender like he kind of did here? Or did they want him to get to the outside? I can say with fairly good confidence they didn't want to get him face-to-face, parallel to the line of scrimmage with that defender, because that gives the defender a two-way go. So this is one of those that Traore is getting to the right place, but I think that once he gets there, that there is growth that's needed in terms of technique. And then last one here, same idea, right? He's getting down there, getting face-to-face with that defender, and then turning fairly tentative, right? He's just kind of sitting there letting the defender do what he wants to do. Whereas, I would like to see Traore just come down there and try to block that defender to the inside, be a little more assertive with what he's doing. But like I said, not a big fan of this Mississippi State offense. Maybe this is what they asked him to do. And if it is, then it doesn't make sense to me as an offensive line guy that is, the coaches, my guys on blocking. This is a position that I would not want them to be in, where they can't really dictate where that defender goes. But it is what it is. Like I said about these type of blocks, you see him understanding it to a sense. It's not an effort thing, in my opinion. He's getting to the right spots. Just whether or not he's fully executing it to the best of his abilities, another area of growth that I think that we could see in the NFL. And then just a quick one here. This is going to be, and this is because this is the only time that I saw him do this through the 5 games that I watched, and this is going to be Traore down here in the slot, and he's going to come into motion, and he's basically going to be in some split flow action, kicking out that backside defensive end. And again, only 1 rep, so not going to put too much into it, but you can kind of see the tentativeness, the lack of pop as a blocker at times. Would like to see him come across and really, wake that edge up, right? If that edge is not going to see you coming across with almost essentially a trap block, then I would like to see him be a little more assertive in that role. But again, this was something I only saw him do once, so I'm not going to criticize his technique on it all that much. He was, effective in a sense. This ball should have been further past the line of scrimmage. He is getting across, getting contact with that defender, making him pursue through the backfield. So it's not a bad job, just room to improve. All right, so for this next set of plays, I'm going to let it play through for the most part. And you're going to find Traore lined up either as a wing or sometimes he's going to be motioning in, but these are all going to be insert lead types blocks. And part of the reason that I'm going to let these play through as I'm talking about them is that there was just so many of them. So I pulled about 100 clips over 5 games of Seydou Traoré, and what it came out to was 22 of those were insert leads that I felt were worth looking at. And I'm not going to sit here and break down each and every one of these, but you can kind of see for yourself as we're working through these how he does with this. And so this was one of the things that he was asked to do the most throughout his time in 2025 with Mississippi State. And I don't think this was the best use of his skills. You can see that he is not the most physical blocker. He's going to get in there. He's a willing blocker. But watching him take on linebackers, most of the time the linebacker is going to win, right? And so they're almost using him more like a fullback in this role than what they are as a tight end. And I don't think that's a good fit for him. I think that, can he do it? Yeah. Should he be asked to do it a quarter of the time, which is essentially when you look at the number of snaps that I pulled, probably not that far off from what he was asked to do. And he probably was better than the other tight ends they had on the roster. I'm not sure they had a true fullback on the roster. So maybe it was just out of necessity that they were asking him to do this. But when we look at his projection to the NFL, right, can he do it? Yeah, like he can do it. He's experienced with it, but is he good at it? I mean, not really. This is not going to be your Alec Ingold replacement by any means. It's going to be more of a guy if you can get him against light boxes that maybe you could use him in this role where he is taking on a big nickel or a corner or something like that. But if you use him this way in the NFL, then I think you're going to be severely disappointed. But this does go back to the John Eric Sullivan quote of his best football being ahead of him. I don't think that the way that Mississippi State used him really maximized what he does best when you look at the percentage of what he was asked to do in that offense. But again, you can kind of watch these on your own and you can see that, there's a lot of room for improvement with each of these. And this next one is going to be the last one that I have, but not a lot of pop at the point of attack, a lack of technique there. So can it be improved? Yes. But is it ever really going to be a strength for Traore? I don't think so. And I am kind of interested to see how Miami decides to use him and to see whether this is the type of role they're asking him to do or, because that's what he did in college, or whether they're transitioning him more to the slot tight end wide receiver type role and he's just asked to do this on occasion. And then same idea here for the perimeter lead blocks. We have 14 of these to go through, so I'm going to let him play. He's going to be a little harder to find, but I'm going to try to help you. Here at the slot, and he's a little better in this role than he was as the insert lead blocker, right? Or, yep, on the edge here. And you can see he's helping out and then getting to the next level. Again, as your wing over here, now he's coming across the formation. Does a good job of navigating that and sealing it, getting to the next level. Over here, climbing to that linebacker, doing a good job here, right? And we talked a little bit earlier with those crack seals of not wanting to get face to face. And on this one, you can see that he's doing a better job of getting to the inside and kind of dictating where that defender can go. So a little better job there, coming in motion, reversing, getting back outside. Over here is a wing. Again, getting outside, getting onto a corner. You can see that he's running a cornerback off the field, right? Much different than when he's facing a linebacker. Top of your screen here, reverse. Another one here, he's got good leverage on a corner or a safety, whatever that is, and does a good job of widening him out. This one shouldn't have been in here. Again, outside, leading for the quarterback, gets inside leverage on that outside linebacker and allows the quarterback to cut up inside of that. Another one here coming across the formation, sifting through it. Don't necessarily like throwing out the shoulder there, but does a good enough job to help that running back get through. Out here again across the formation for the quarterback, leading out. And big block there, right? That one leads to a touchdown. Coming in motion again across the formation. Another block that leads to a big run, gets that corner, widens him out, lets the quarterback get inside of that. So you can see with these type of blocks that he's a lot better in these situations than he was on those insert lead blocks. And I think that when we get to the NFL, this is going to be the type of thing that if you want to see him succeed as a blocker, that this is the type of stuff I think you need to try to be asking him to do. And then I think I talked about a little bit earlier about him being more of a slot tight end, wide receiver type role. So these are going to be some, stalk blocks. Those are going to be, screens, stuff like that, where he's just climbing up to the defender in front of him, trying to mirror him and get attached. And you can see he does a decent job for the most part. He's coming in motion here, has the slot defender outside, and just doing a good job getting to that defender and just mirroring him. This is a linebacker, so he disengages a little bit easier, but Traore is doing a good job with the effort there. Right now we're getting him coming in motion again, probably going to be something fairly similar. Another screen pass over here. And would like to see Traore get his hands on that defender a little better. But the throw was bad, so maybe if that throw is quicker, then that receiver can cut to the inside of that, and it looks a lot better than what it does in the end. And then last one here, another handoff. Struggles with the quickness and space there a little bit. Another situation where he's kind of given that defender a two-way go. Now, he works a little bit to the inside, but he doesn't really close that space, and that defender is able to just run by him. So perimeter leads, screen passes with the stalk blocks. I think that's where, you're going to find him being I don't want to say a plus level player, but an adequate player in the NFL early on that can continue to develop. Maybe he can develop into some of that other stuff, but if you start asking him to do the other stuff from day one, then I think you could end up with a lot more ugly reps than if you ask him to do the perimeter leads, the stalk blocking, that type of stuff. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of our Seydou Traoré film review. And as you can see throughout the film, like there's a lot of things that he does, and there's some things that he does very well, and there's other things that he needs to continue to improve upon in the NFL. And I think that as much as anything, the way that that development is handled could go a long way to determining how this fairly new player to NFL or American football transitions to the NFL. I think that if you're looking at him to fill in and be your Durham Smythe, your Julian Hill type player, then you're going to be pretty disappointed in him. I don't think that even though that's the way Mississippi State used him, that's the best usage of him when we talk about his growth into the NFL. I think that if you look at him more. I was talking to Anthony yesterday on Focused on Fins, and he made the comparison to Jonnu Smith, and I do think that's a much better comparison because Jonnu was never a great blocker, but he was good with the ball in his hands, good in space. I think that Jonnu had a little more of that lateral quickness than what Seydou Traoré does, or at least what he's shown so far. But I think that's more the type of player that you would want to see Traoré emulate, is the stuff that Jonnu Smith was asked to do when he was with the Miami Dolphins. In terms of role, it'll be interesting to see what they do. A lot of these international pathway players end up getting cut at the end of the 53 cut downs. They're brought back on the practice squad because they're afforded an extra roster spot on the practice squad. But at the same time, Traore being a fifth round pick, those guys typically make your 53-man roster. And if you end up cutting them, then they are susceptible to being poached by somebody else. And we saw that with Elijah Higgins a few years back. I do think there is an opportunity for Traore to be on the 53, especially with where this tight end room is currently. Right, he could do a lot of the same things that Greg Dulcich does in this offense. And I think that if you get into a 13 personnel where you have Will Kacmarek, Greg Dulcich, and Traore as your third tight end, where he is matched up against those linebackers, safeties, corners, then I do think that you can get some good snaps out of him. Like all of these day three guys, a lot of that could depend on how well he contributes on special teams. And that's something that I didn't look at on his college film, so I don't know how much he did of it, but it is something that he's going to need to figure out how to do at the NFL level. But I do think there is a lot of upside here with Seydou Traoré, but just don't expect a whole lot out of him out of year one. This is the type of player that, if we go into 2026 and Greg Dulcich just has a average year and Traore shows development, then maybe you decide after this year to, go ahead and move on from Dulcich, who could be getting a little more expensive, and you've got Traore to fill in organically, right? Or it could just push Greg Dulcich to rise up to that next level and become, a top 10 tight end in the league, especially on the receiving side of things. So definitely a competition, a roster spot to keep your eye on. But I do think that Traore, again, is a player that could start out a little slower. Maybe we don't see him a whole lot. But as that season develops, as long as he makes the 53, that we could see him getting a few more opportunities, becoming a little more, getting the quarterbacks a little more confident in him. And hopefully by year 3 or 4, this is a guy that we've seen, take that international pathway player program and develop it into a plus level starter in the NFL. But appreciate you guys watching. Hope you like this review. Leave some comments. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know, if you see them using him in a different way than I've described, or if I'm not seeing the potential with him as a inline blocker or an insert lead blocker. Love to hear your thoughts on that type of stuff. But until we talk again, have a good one.